Excellent. Let's get started. So thanks everybody for joining our session today. I'm really delighted that we have Onyi Ough with us to talk about her work in trying to change social norms and educate people around the impact of corruption. So Onyi is an international development practitioner, and she originally I came across her because she had written these fantastic children's books which were trying to get children thinking about and talking about corruption. And then things have really moved on very quickly, and some of those books have been turned into fantastic animated movies, which I really recommend. And she also set up an NGO called Step Up Nigeria, and she's actually been doing a lot of really interesting educational work and also interesting research, I think, increasingly to understand what the impact of that kind of approach is. So today is going to work that Onyi will talk for about 25-30 minutes about what she's been doing, and then we will open up to questions. So do think about what questions you might have as we're going through. Onyi, are you ready to go?
Great, yeah. So as Liz mentioned, good morning, everyone. I will be discussing storytelling as as an effective approach in the fight against corruption. Before then, I'll just talk briefly about Step Up Nigeria. Step Up Nigeria is a non-governmental organization in Nigeria focused really on creating the bridges between governments and citizens to tackle corruption. And there are two key problems we're trying to address at the moment, which is really around the broken value systems and social norms.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you want to just put it on slideshow? Because at the moment we can see your...
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No problem.
So sorry. I didn't, yeah. Is that better now?
Yes, perfect.
Great, yeah, sorry about that. There are two key problems we're trying to address. We're trying to address broken value systems and social norms. And social norms we've identified as a key driver or enabler of corruption over many years in Nigeria. And the fact that when people are in positions of power, there's this expectation that they are supposed to be rich, or they're supposed to help family and friends and that sort of thing. So what we're trying to do really in Step Up Nigeria is begin to challenge those social norms and for people to begin to think about how those social norms affect, enable corruption and affect the delivery of public goods and services. And so to do that, to begin to tackle social norms, we thought to ourselves, it's so difficult to change the mindset of adults. And how do we begin to introduce or instill values that we need to create that kind of society where integrity is the norm? And we thought, we have to engage children. So we saw, engaging children as the first step towards fix some of the problems we had identified. And we thought engaging children was important because, first of all, for good governance, we need to plant the seeds for good governance. And we see the engagement we have with children in schools as planting those seeds, because, like I said, it's easier to shape the mindset of children than for adults. So we see what we do as planting the seeds for good governance in the future. And the program Step Up Nigeria does, we see it as a vaccination program, where we're trying to immunize the future generation from corruption. So this is really just to give you a broad overview of what Step Up Nigeria is trying to achieve with our storytelling intervention. Now, we may want to ask why storytelling. I mean, it's very simple. It simplifies messaging. We don't want to, particularly when you're engaging children or young people, we don't want to bore them with very long statements or speeches. We want to just get straight to the point, and we want to have characters that they can relate to, and also make them, make them understand what the message is, the story, we're trying to convey. So we thought storytelling would be a good tool for that. So it helps to simplify messaging, and it still educates, in a fun way. And we think that storytelling as well, while we went for storytelling, that it can inspire action, particularly because stories usually have characters that people look up to. So we thought that it had the key elements we needed to inspire that change. Now I'm going to talk you through our behavioral change journey using storytelling. One of the things we're trying to do with using storytelling as an approach in the fight against corruption is to really reinforce certain behaviors within children. First, the need to act with integrity, either in school or at home, because we see this as the building blocks for good governance in the future. It's difficult. Institutions matter, but individuals also matter. And I think it's time that people begin to pay attention to having individuals, with good values in positions of power, but because you never know what we can get. We see what happened in the US with Trump and all that. So we don't always have to rely on institutions. We need to start building individuals with good values. And that's what we're trying to do with this program, where we're trying to reinforce those good values from an early age. So they need to act with integrity, and they need to speak up against wrongdoing. So there are three key elements of our behavioral change approach where using storytelling. One is that the three of them are educate, test, and reward. So the first one is educate. Our approach is to really use those stories to educate children on the cost of corruption, the benefits of integrity, and how they can take part in stopping corruption. So there are three things there in our education program. But we don't only just educate them, we also test our approaches as well. We want to test to see, what approach works best for what. So what tool do films work better than books? Do we need to engage the kids in the participatory book reading session, or do we just drop the books in schools and still get the desired effect? So we tend to do a lot of testing as we go along as well. So we don't want to just have nice to have books or films, and everybody has a good time watching the film and it ends there. We want to test to see what is really working or changing. And then we also reward actions as well. This is all part of our behavioral change approach, because we believe that when you reward extraordinary measures taken by the children to tackle corruption or to promote integrity within their schools or at home, then we can also inspire change in others. So these are the key elements of our behavioral change approach. Just wanted to share some of our books. So we have storybooks, audiobooks, comic books that we use to engage children, and each of our storybooks are focused on different themes. So the kids have a flavor and understanding of how corruption occurs in different ways. And then we have audiobooks as well. Enables us to ensure that children with disabilities and as well as out of school children as well, maybe who cannot read but can also be included in our programs. As I mentioned earlier, one of the things we do is book reading as part of our education program. So we go to schools to engage them in book reading sessions. We call them participatory book reading sessions, where we read to the kids and they read to us as well. But the key element of those sessions is that we try to bring out behaviors that have been identified in the stories and get the kids to reflect on what they think about those behaviors and get them to also give us their views on what they think can be done to tackle some of those behaviors. And these are some of examples of some of our book reading sessions as well, as you can see. Then we also have films, as Liz had mentioned earlier. We also adapt some of our books into films. So here we have Emeka's Money and Halima's Boat. Emeka's Money was launched last year and really looks at the social norms. That was really the key thing Emeka's Money was trying to achieve, to kind of challenge the social norms, show people how the idea of helping your friends and family can have serious cost on the provision of public goods and services. Halima's Vote was just recently launched, and it's really an animated film that focuses on vote buying and vote selling, and also the role that women and girls can play in governance, and as well as the fact that anyone can make a difference as well. That any citizen, you don't have to be in a position of power, you don't have to be working in an NGO to make a difference. And that's what we're trying to do with these two films. And this is just a cross-section of students watching some of our films during our sessions. And then, in addition to producing films and storybooks, we thought that would not be sufficient. Step Up Nigeria can't go to all the schools in Nigeria, or we can't keep doing this, forever. We need to have have a more sustained approach and begin to institutionalize what we are doing. So we work with schools to get this embedded within their school subjects. So we've started training teachers. We train teachers on anti-corruption education, because many of the teachers actually told us that we want to teach this anti-corruption or want to mainstream anti-corruption as part of what we teach, but we don't know how. So what we do is show them ways they can include anti-corruption, either in social studies, civic education, or English literature. And so we provide them with trainings and provide them with the toolkit to do this, and showing them how they can actually teach this topic in fun ways that the kids can engage. So far at the output level, we've trained about 13,000 children on the cost of corruption in Nigeria. Over 200 teachers have been trained, and almost 20,000 children now have access to anti-corruption resources, and which is, as a result, we are seeing about 2,000 young anti-corruption champions identified. And we define anti-corruption champions as those children who have demonstrated some sort of commitment or taken some form of action to begin to tackle corruption, or have made pledges as well. And in doing all this, we had to work with about 297 schools to begin to institutionalize anti-corruption education. So another thing, like I said, a part of our, if you remember earlier in the previous slides, I had mentioned the 3 key elements of our behavioral change approaches in storytelling. One of them was education, which I've just spoken about, and we're going to move into the testing part. So we test for 2 things. The first thing we test for is around to what extent do our tools increase the knowledge, and to what extent does it change the attitudes towards corruption for the children that have used these tools. And we use the following tools to test knowledge. We have pre-evaluation questionnaires, we have post-evaluation questionnaires. The questionnaires are usually a little bit, we keep on reiterating them, because you know how questionnaires can be. Sometimes we're not too sure if children are just ticking the box. So I wouldn't really, we still have them because we need to have them. We need to just, it's not something we can wish away, but we are really, really working hard to think of better ways of actually collecting kids' understanding, because we found that the kids tend to see it as some kind of examination, and that they need to really answer it correctly. So, we get to sometimes get some, I will call it false results. But so to address that issue, we also complement questionnaires with what we call anti-corruption creative challenge, where we actually allow the kids to express themselves, either by writing stories or writing plays or poems, or even illustration. If you don't want to write, you can just draw. Tell us how you feel about corruption. And that way we know, okay, they are getting it or they are not getting it. So that has actually been quite effective. And for me, that's really one of my favorite parts of the session with kids, when I see their creative works and on how they express corruption issues. I'm going to show you some of them. This is an illustration from a 16-year-old boy, I think, and there's one from a 12-year-old girl. And it just, what I like about it, you just see their thought process, around the topic after we've engaged them. So we and people have written beautiful stories and poems and speeches and letters to the president, on this issue, which also been very interesting. And what we're finding is that the initial, just reading the books and either watching the film, we are seeing about 55% of the children we've engaged have shown some kind of strong commitment and have made anti-corruption pledges to promote integrity in their homes or in their schools. So that's what we're initially finding from those questionnaires and creative challenge. But our testing just doesn't stop at testing for knowledge. We also wanted to test the impact of our tools on behavior. And so what did we test? We wanted to test if our tools can influence the behavior of children to act with integrity. So, and to do this, we had to we thought about using a kind of a medical trial process, what we call like a randomized impact evaluation, using a randomized impact evaluation, where we wanted to measure if after reading the books or watching the films, children would either cheat for themselves or cheat for others, or whether people would just do the right thing. There would be no evidence of cheating. And so, like I said, we used like a randomized impact evaluation where we divided the children into control and treatment groups. So, and what we did, we tried to use children from the same class so that they have the similar background and there'll be no room for, to reduce bias. So we go into a class that has given us consent to take part in the trial. And we divide them into control and treatment groups. And to make it a bit more fun for the kids, sometimes we use cartoon characters. So, if you're Paw Patrol, then you're in the treatment group. If you're, Elsa, then you're in the control group, that sort of thing. So we wanted to make it a little bit, fun for them. But the key challenge as well was we had a big challenge of thinking what kind of test can we give children for, integrity. At the end of the day, they are kids. I'm talking about 10-year-olds, 9. And you have to think about the fact that we also have to be careful not to do any harm, because when you're doing trials of this sort, you have to ensure that you do no harm to the kids. You have to ensure that all the kids benefit. So we had some ethical principles we had to follow. So we had to think, and we also wanted it to be realistic. We're not expecting to put kids in a scenario of paying bribes to policemen. At the end of the day, they're kids. So we needed to find something that was, realistic that was something that they could also face. And that is why we decided to use a cheating scenario. So that is why the examination thing came. And so we organized the maths and English test competition. We went to the class, told the kids, look, guys, we're going to have maths and English tests. We had a lovely basket with some good-looking presents, and told them that, if you score, do very well in this maths and English test, you're going to get, these gifts when we come back in 3 or 4 months time, and I would explain why we said that. So we had to make sure that there was high stakes for suffering in this test. And we also give them very tough questions. We had to, for the maths test, we give them really 2 grades above, their grade level maths, but some grade level questions as well. And then for the English questions, we gave them very difficult spelling, with a spelling bee, and we gave them a development jargon of chronism and embezzlement and all that sort of thing to spell. So we really got them, so we made it really tough, but also wanted them to want it, and so that was the whole thing, because the idea is that you want to put them in a corruption scenario without a real corruption scenario, but you want to put them in their everyday life. So they do tests, they do exams, and that sort of thing. And we wanted to ensure that there were elements there. So, and I'll come to that. How did we test for cheating? We give them the power to self-mark their scripts. And in the corruption scenario, there's usually power, right, and discretion. So giving them that power to mark their scripts, you see that when you're an authority, you're in a position of power, how do you act? Do you choose at that point of marking the scripts? They have the power to do the right thing. And we also wanted them to see, test for their discretion, how would they react to certain things, while marking. And to test as well for cheating, we had blue pens for writing and black pens for marking. To be honest, the first test, which we discarded, we didn't end up using for this evaluation. We actually gave them green pens, I think, and blue pen, and it was because it was so hard for them to cheat. I think it's not like we wanted them to cheat, but I think it became a bit, you know what I mean? People still did, funny enough, but it was, we found that there was a bit more cautious. We wanted to be natural, what would be enough. So we knew that green pens were not really realistic. So we had to, change to blue and black pens. And how we were detecting cheating was to find out those that altered their scores, or those that mark wrong answers right, because what we did, that we give them the scripts at the end of the test to mark. I forgot to mention that before the test, the process is this: when we divide them into control and treatment groups. For the control group, like I said, we're following an ethical principle of doing no harm. So we discussed COVID-19 with them. They did illustrative writing around the experience of COVID-19, and we made made it fun for them. For the treatment group, they watched the film or they read the books. And after they did watch the film, then we gave the test. Now, what did we find? We found that for the films, after those in the treatment, it reduced cheating by 20%, and for the books, it reduced cheating by 21%, compared to those in the control group. And one interesting thing we found was that there was more impact on reducing cheating for your own self in comparison to cheating for others. And it just struck me, it goes back to the social norms thing as well. It was a little bit like, the Robin Hood effect, where, Robin Hood was stealing for the good of his community, right? So I feel people feel like if they're helping their friends, or you know what I mean, like because it was quite glaring actually, and it just showed us what the real life is. People did not mind having personal integrity, but when it came to marking their friends' scripts, they were a little bit more cautious and were trying to help as much as possible. And I found that really interesting. Now, what other changes are we seeing beyond the evidence-based research, which I've just talked about? We also collect anecdotal evidence from teachers, parents, around kids' behaviors. And these are some of the changes we're recording: that more children are resisting selling votes during school elections. We're also seeing children speaking up against corrupt behaviors and promoting integrity. I'll tell you a brief story of one of the one that really struck me and made me feel like, okay, Step Up Nigeria, you need to keep doing what you're doing. We had gone to a school to engage them on Halima's vote. This was like, I think 2 years ago, I can't remember, but we went to engage them on Halima's vote, and we read Halima's vote to them. And then we came back like some months after, when we engaged them with the book Halima's vote is the storybook and the film I mentioned, but at the point we hadn't made the film, it was just a storybook. That was during the election, the first 2015 election. No, there was an election going on, I think. I can't remember, was it the 2019 election? Yes. So we had engaged kids before the 2019 election. And when we came back afterwards to the school, the head teacher told us the story of Esther, that there was a truck, in Nigeria, vote buying and vote selling, as we know, is a common feature in elections. And this truck had come, this was in Abuja, in front of their school. And this 6-7-year-old girl, Esther was her name, at the time, saw this truckload of like, sugar, milk, just groceries and that sort of thing, because they had come to distribute it to the teachers and the head teacher in the school. And so the head teacher said she was about going to collect her own gift items, and this girl stopped and said, she calls her mommy. It's a Nigerian thing, people do it. She's not really her mom, but they call the head teacher like mommy. She said, mommy, don't go there. Remember, they told us in Halima's vote, you should not sell your votes. They're here to sell your vote. And she was thinking about it, like, what's this girl talking about? We read it in Halima's vote. And that story always sticks with me, because it's like, this is just, we came to read a book. We didn't even think, to be honest, when we started this engagement, we didn't really think the impact it could have on some kids. And this girl was really like passionate. And this is just a young girl in primary 1 at that time, or primary 2, 7-year-old or 6-year-old girl. So she was taken aback and said, oh my God. She says, okay, don't worry, I'm not going to take the kids. But these are some of the stories we hear that encourage us and shows you the power of storytelling, that we went to a school, read Halima's vote, and that story stuck with her, and she felt like, no, you shouldn't sell your votes. And we have also heard about people refusing to be bought with bribes from their parents and classmates in school. This is just a picture just showing children speaking up against corruption in a radio program in FCT. So that was a very heated debate here. It's all part of the storytelling, inspiring these kids to be confident and speaking about these issues. One interesting thing we're finding, which is what we thought would happen anyway, is the fact that the fictional characters from the stories have, are beginning to resonate with children. The children see them as trendsetters now. And people now want to be like, particularly with the films, people now want to be like Halima in the film, or Emeka, or that sort of thing. And I think it's an interesting area we're also watching out for, to what extent fictional anti-corruption heroes can also inspire change in children. Now, the third element of our behavioral change program after testing is reward. We think it's very important that we reward extraordinary measures that young people have taken to tackle corruption. So here we have 2 of our Anti-Corruption Star Award winners for last year. That's Neto and Ganiyu. Neto was, at the time of this award last year, she was 9-year-old, and she did, what she did was she challenged her elder sister, whom she caught stealing money from her mom's purse. And her elder sister tried to bribe her with sweets, and so don't worry, I'll give you biscuits, I'll give you sweets. And she said, no, you have to act, do the right thing. We were told to do the right thing at all times. Beyond challenging that sort of behavior at home, in school, her classmates, told us during the interviews when we're trying to validate her story about how she keeps on talking about the need to do the right thing, act with integrity, and all that started after she read Emeka's story. Here we have Onyi Ough, he's 15-year-old at the time he won the award last year. He comes from a very poor community in the northern part of Nigeria, and he was a victim of, I would say, corruption, in the sense that he was used to buy votes. So I think the last election, he said he was paid, I think about in total 1,500 basically to vote for, and he was underaged. But then he didn't know he was bad. He was underaged. He just thought he was happy to get 1,500 naira, and he voted. So he sold his votes basically. And so after reading Halima's vote, he realized, oh my God, so I actually did something really bad. And he said he got home and told his mom, you shouldn't sell, because his mom also sold have got money for voting as well. And what he's now become an ardent campaigner in his community, on the need to stop vote buying. And this is the reason why he won an award last year as well. We just feel like, some people may take this as some baby steps, but for us, they're big things, because these are, it shows the transformation from the process they've gone through. People who were at a certain level when we met them, and they've decided to not just, they're bold enough to begin to speak up. And that is why we are rewarding them, to inspire action. We hope that the stories of Onyi Ough and Neto would encourage other children and even adults as well, to act with integrity. So now I've been talking a lot about vaccines for young people, but we thought, can we have a vaccine for adults? Can we do something with adults? I'm still struggling to know if that is possible, but we want to try. And that's why we launched the virtual reality film. So that was, I think, early this year, we launched the virtual reality documentary called Sherifa School. And the idea was, we want to begin to think about if we can also find out a vaccine that could be useful to vaccinate the older population against corruption, which, to be honest, is much needed right now in Nigeria. We're in a hopeless situation. And I think we definitely, we're in a race to find the right vaccine, if I'm right, if I'm committed to use against corruption for the older population. And so that is why we launched Sherifa School. So it's basically, Sherifa School is a film about a young girl who aspires to be a lawyer, but the behaviors of the public servants who are corrupt, has made, inhibited her from having the kind of learning experience and learning environment that she needed to thrive. And the reason why we decided to choose virtual reality was, I was inspired by the 2018 Stanford study that did also something similar. It wasn't like it was some kind of virtual reality film called Becoming Homeless. And in that study, what they found out after the study was that people who watched the VR film by Stanford had more empathy, and were more willing to sign the petitions against petition to help homeless people. And I found that very strong and inspiring. And I think it's also been used for dementia training, for nurses here in the UK as well, to create more empathy for dementia patients. So when reading the Stanford study, I thought this could be something, we could explore in the anti-corruption field, and which is the reason why we decided to test. So we said, okay, look, we work in the education field. Should we try this with the public servants in the education sector? And so we also tried to randomize participation here. So we randomized participants into two groups. We had the people who watched the film in VR format and the people who watched the film in non-VR format, the regular 2D version. And just to see whether it's VR itself is that magic bullet, or just any film would have done the same thing. And we divided them into control and treatment groups. And then we had them, one of the things we wanted to test here, we're not necessarily targeting change in behavior, just to note. We just wanted to kind of amplify the anti-corruption message and see if we could have change in attitude, because like I said, it's difficult to change adult behavior, but we're wondering, attitude is the first step. So if we begin to change that attitude, can that lead to behavioral change for adults? And so we had voluntary pledges and action plans. After watching the film, if you feel strong enough and committed to want to do something, you make a pledge and give us your action plan on what you want to do, and would follow up. Now, I must warn that this is really an emerging area. I'm not going to hold the results we've gotten here hands-on because it's really a small number we've done, really, really small. We plan to roll out, a bit more. But with the probably about, I don't know, I think, I can't remember how many people will engage. We engage about, I think we'll say about 100 of, I can't remember how many we engaged for this session in Lagos and FCT. But what I can tell you is that more people showed more empathy from the Behavioural session, about 21 people, I think, in one of the sessions, if I remember, and 9 in the non-Behavioural had, made pledges. So we saw, which was quite interesting, but I don't want to conclude anything, like I said, because the numbers are really small. But in one session, I can tell you, between Lagos and Kaduna and Abuja, we saw that at least 21 people who watched the VR film took up pledges and action plans, in comparison to 9 people who watched it in the non-VR. And we thought that this is looking promising. It's still small. The numbers are too small to say anything. So it's an emerging area, results not conclusive, but needs to be rolled out on a larger scale to see, where this could lead us. But it's something we really want to try, because what we found as well was that people who watched the film in VR format were a bit more empathetic towards the plight of the girl, but we had to walk through the plight of the girl, and they were less defensive. But those in the non-VR, the discussions, because after the film, then we have like a group discussion. We found that most of the people in the non-VR tend to like, oh, it's not our fault, it's this person, the governor that steals it, is that person. There was a bit of a more blame game that we were observing. This is observation now from the groups during the focus group discussions after the film. And so that was also interesting for me as well to see. So just to conclude on our storytelling interventions, so from what we've done so far over the last three years in Step Up Nigeria, we think that storytelling through animated films and participatory book reading has a strong potential to improve the knowledge and attitudes towards corruption among the targeted children. We also believe that it has a potential to influence the behavior of children to act with integrity. And we saw that increasing the understanding of corruption may be helpful in motivating people to act with integrity, because what we found was that people who took action, people in the randomized impact evaluation we did, we saw a correlation between a strong understanding of corruption and not cheating. But we didn't want to conclude because, again, in that area, we're not statistically confident around the understanding part, but we are seeing something there. Then we found that it's more impactful, like I mentioned earlier, in building personal integrity than in addressing some social pressures or norms. So we think that the storytelling, when it comes to personal integrity, making individual changes, we saw that as having a strong impact. We're quite confident in that. Well, we're not too sure when it comes to addressing, some of the social norms or pressures we're trying to do, how much more impactful that storytelling can be. We are wondering, whether for storytelling interventions to effectively address social norms, do we need to have more doses, or should we have sustained interventions? Because, like I said, this is just one dose. They've just had a dose of a film in some cases and a dose of the book in another case. So more research is needed to see how many doses of anti-corruption storybooks and films are needed. And we think we want to do a proper research at some point on the effects of anti-corruption awards to see to what extent it inspires behavioral change in others. So storytelling is not a magic bullet, but it has a strong potential to reduce corruption in young people. But there are 3 key elements that I think should be there, because I don't want people to come out thinking that any story can change things, but I think it's important that I think there are certain elements. The story has to have positive messaging. So don't leave people hopeless. Let them know that they can actually do something, and let them know that it's not, it's not a gloom situation. The cost of corruption is very important, because that's the only way we can begin to create that empathy. People need to see the cost of corrupt actions, and then encourage action. Whatever story we tell, we should have some element that encourage citizens to act. And that's me done. Thank you.
Thanks, Onyi. I don't know about everybody else, but I find it completely fascinating and inspiring. And I absolutely love the movies too. They're brilliant, but also really fascinating to hear about all of those extra testing and interventions that you're doing. So we're going to throw the floor open for questions. If you have a question, please just raise your hand, and then I'll come to you so you can ask it. Or if you're feeling shy, then you can also write your question in the chat. But I think, we're a small enough group that it would be nice to have a discussion if possible. We've got lots of people on the call who I'm sure will be really interested in this. And just to shout out a couple of names, I would be really interested to hear what Jackman thinks, who has a lot of experience of working with young people on anti-corruption in Côte d'Ivoire. I'd be really interested to hear what Yang thinks, who's writing her PhD about anti-corruption narratives in China and how they're very much top-down narratives. But very much interested to hear everyone's comments. And we have a first question from Maria. Maria, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and ask your question?
Sure, thank you so much. It was really, really inspiring, and I am really surprised that this can really happen, and like the level of commitment that you're showing, it's amazing. So I'm really inspired. And I have a small organization in Costa Rica. I'm a journalist, and I'm studying corruption and governance at Sussex. And I was wondering first if you think these experiments are replicable, if I can, like, for example, read something and like replicate this in Costa Rica, for example, and how easy it is to get funds for these kind of projects. I saw in your screen that you had like some applications for grants, and that's what I do all the time. So I would like to know where those funds are, if you can share a little bit about it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Maria. Onyi?
Thanks, Maria. When it comes to grants, I'll start with the grant question. I think you just look for my Capital Foundation funders. They've been extremely, extremely wonderful, to be honest. We're just lucky that with the head of the foundation, shared my vision when I first met him. And I think it's just finding someone that gets what you're trying to do. And you're right, it's quite difficult to get funding for this sort of thing because it's long term. And donors like, quick results, they like the more like the sanctions kind of work where you can see number of cases or whatever. So to be honest, it was really tough. But we've had some good UNODC, they don't give grants, but they have also a program similar to what we're doing, and they've been also been quite supportive as well. I think when we first started, they paid for 1,000 books to be distributed to kids. So I think it's just finding out, the right donors for that sort of thing, and just keep searching and you see who. So tell your story well, what you're trying to do. But the tip I would give you is just before we got donor backing, we had some, small results to show. I think that gave them confidence to kind of back us fully on this. So we didn't just like start off. Yeah, it started with, I had to self-fund the NGO for a year myself, and then it was from getting the results that we're doing that we got donor backing. And the second thing you asked about if the experiments can be replicated. Yes, I think, and that's something I think I would encourage. I think it's important that people start to test a bit more, so that you don't waste your time doing interventions that don't lead anywhere. And I think it depends on what you're trying to test for. It depends on what, I don't know, where are you from? I don't know, it depends on different things, the scenario, but I think it can definitely be replicated. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. Yang.
Hello, hi Onyi. I really like your presentation and it's fantastic. And I have read the Amicus Economy. I have read that book. I think it's quite nice. And I have two questions. And one is, can you share us a bit more plots about the stories and the anti-corruption stories in Nigeria? Like maybe if there's other stories like related to the local cultural or historical context, or just their everyday life, like just the morality things, or maybe you can just share us some links, like can introduce more the anti-corruption stories in your country. And the second question is, I'm just curious, do you have the long-term plan to observe these children, like in the future, how they're gonna battle with the social norms? And because I'm doing anti-corruption and I'm doing research on anti-corruption stories in China. And so in China's case, we have the saying like the anti-corruption education, it's not the one jab vaccine. Like you mentioned about, it's not the one jab vaccine. It might have too many doses. Like maybe you have the first jab in your childhood, and then the second one in the teenage, and then the last one when you grow up as an adult. So I'm curious if you have this like ambitious plan to observe these children, how they're gonna change in the future. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Yang. Well, you've actually asked us a brilliant question, actually, because we've had that coming. People have actually asked me about doing some tracer studies. Mm-hmm. So the thing with that, Yang, we actually wanted to start, but it's quite tricky. It's first of all, it's quite expensive.
Yes.
We actually wanted to even test, at least do a tracer study on some particular students for like 3-4 years. But they move so fast, people move states, they move, like you meet them in primary school, by the time you go back, of course, they're in secondary school, and then just trying to, the school may not have records of them. But something we are really thinking about, if funding permits, is in our long-term plan to actually do some studies, even though it's few individuals who have, done some extraordinary things and followed them through. So it's something in our long-term plans, but thanks for mentioning that. And then when it comes to the anti-corruption stories, I think you mean just other stories or just what Step Up Nigeria has done? Because we could send you link of all the anti-corruption stories we have. We have different types. We try to show, talk about corruption in journalism, and we have that Tosin story is one of them. We have like the one on just like everyday corruption that you experience with the police, and so we have different stories. So if you want from Step Up Nigeria, we can share the link. I'm happy to share the link with Georgia.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's fine. Yeah. Thanks, Yang.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add on that, in terms of the sustainability issue, I remember seeing some research a few years ago, which was with accountants, and it was looking at what the impact of training was and how long it lasted, and basically they found that the training had to be quite recent for it to have an impact on their behavior. So that would suggest that this is a vaccination that you need to take fairly regularly, actually, or maybe at least as you're building it up, to build up that immunity. But I think really interesting question. Who's next? Chitu is next.
Hello, thank you very much for that really fascinating presentation. I've watched a few of the videos, Mecca Story, Halima's Vote, and I think an audiobook of Ansa's speech. And I grew up in Nigeria and Canada, and so they really resonated with me. It brought a lot of memories from my childhood. And so I just have a few comments. Okay, personally, I'm a professor at Schema Business School in Paris. So, I mean, these are not necessarily in order, but I have to say that I've not read the books directly, but I've watched these videos. So I guess it was just audiobook of Ansa's speech, but I was really impressed by the artistic quality of the videos, and I've seen pictures of the book, so I imagine the animation studio that you worked with probably had quite a hand in the artistic quality, and I'll say especially with Halima's Vote, I was just really, blown away by that.
Yeah, so we work with, that's another thing I was going to mention as well.
Onyi, we can't quite hear you.
Sorry.
You're very faint.
Oh, can you hear me now? My network.
Better. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Chitu, thanks for that. One of the things we try to do in Step Up Nigeria is to work with the creative industry, and we're quite lucky to find Basement Animation Studios. So we work with Basement Animation Studios to produce the actual production. And I think it's quite good to see, like, because we as the knowledge experts on anti-corruption and they as creatives who, like have the skill, coming together and trying to ensure that, we keep to messaging and all. Yeah, so we use we work with Basement Animation Studios to produce the film. Well, I work with a different illustrator for my books. So that's why you see different pictures. So Halima's Book, the book, you have different style as well, of illustration, which is separate from the film. So we do that actually. And now we even have what is good in the animation industry and company we work with, I would say, have even become anti-corruption activists now, during the process, because they're now because we work in partnership together.
Okay. Then the second thing is, so I'm a researcher and I'm just starting to get into anti-corruption research. And as you described, your educate, test, and reward, especially when it came to the testing part. I can see you have some very strong scientific standards in the testing. Are there some I guess social scientists on your team in Step Up that guide the process, and are there any academic publications that come out of these tests that you're doing?
We just did the test. We haven't really published it academically because we haven't gone through that. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, the audio is really.
Oh, I don't know.
I think it might be the internet connection, unfortunately.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me better? I don't know.
You're just very faint.
Let me see what's going on. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, that's better. Maybe just get quite close to the microphone.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I don't know. We really have very bad broadband here at the moment.
We can hear you now.
You can hear me? Can you hear me?
It is better now, yes.
Oh, great. So when it comes to you asked them if we had any social scientists. No, we actually do have a lot of, we call it specialists that volunteer their time to help us with, validating the data and the process. And also before we started the trial, we had someone as well who works with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, trained staff as well on randomized impact trial, collected data, all that. So that was helpful for us at the beginning, to now design the program. So we get lots of goodwill from experts, who are not necessarily on my team, but they just help me, because I know them, and yeah. So I think that's for now, that because we can't afford at this stage to kind of pay for, we're still a small NGO, so we can't really afford to pay for expensive consultants to come and, so I'm also experienced in evaluation as well. So with my evaluation experience as well, I use so I lead on the evaluation work, yeah.
Okay. But just an idea, I think it would, I don't know, maybe from this group or elsewhere, it would probably not be hard to get some full-time researchers to partner and regularly participate and turn that into publications. I think the quality of what you're doing is really excellent on that level. Then just my last...
Yeah. Okay, one more then, if it's quick.
I'm sorry. So the last one is that, so you're taking a really bottom-up approach, starting from the schools. I mean, not directly the children, you obviously have to go through the schools, but how much have you been trying to work on the state or federal level to incorporate your materials into the educational curriculums as part of required curriculum in maybe a local government area or state even? How much is that part of your strategy?
Definitely part of our strategy. In fact, the integral part, I just mentioned that. Halima's voice, for example, is something adopted by NERDC. Oh my God, you can't hear me still? What's going on with my speakers? Can you hear me?
See, it's probably the internet connection, and unfortunately, probably the best way to resolve would be turn off the video and just leave the audio. That'll be terrible to not be able to see your video. Technically, that's probably what would resolve the audio best.
Can you hear me now?
I think it's much clearer now.
So we are doing that as well. We're working with curriculum departments at the state level and the national level. We had NERDC, which is the national curriculum agency, approved Halima's vote last year. So as a reading text, what we need to do is follow up. We've had some of them approved for library use at the FCT level. So yes, it's something we're doing. And we're also working with private school associations as well to actually adopt the materials as part of their reading text for literature and all that. So that's the key part of our sustainability plan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chitu.
Thank you very much. Okay, so next question is from Olan Rawaju Siraju.
That's my brother.
All right. Perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you for providing this opportunity for Onyi to actually showcase an amazing job. And I just want to not only commend what she's been doing, but also to give some very good background for us to really appreciate the potential impact of what she's doing. I got the question about the sustainability of what she's doing from one of the participants, and I think that's a very great question. But when you come to the context of Nigeria, really, you would see that if we have a serious government, what Onyi Ough is doing is what the government should be doing, really, not just using civil society, but also the National Orientation Agency should be at the forefront of this. And this, for me, is what I'm going to see how I work with Onyi Ough to get some government buy-in and also some government agencies taking on board some of these ideas. Since 1999, we've had a trend where the focus in the country was trying to change the old and the public office holder. And I must confess to you, we have totally failed. We have failed in such that the corruption state in the country is not diminishing, but rather it is increasing. Sadly enough for us, the youth are getting into it seriously. So almost on the page of the paper, you would hear and read about EFCC arresting cyber criminals from our universities in hundreds and in tens across the country. So that confirms to us that we're already breeding those who are not only practicalizing it by engaging in cybercrime offenses, but we are also breeding homes where the parents and custodian and guardians, they've completely lost the responsibility of molding the children. And this is where such a project like this is not the serving the purpose of assisting in the young. It is also about determining the future of the country. So I am very happy to see the listenership. I am very happy to see how brilliantly Onyi Ough has presented our work. I have looked at some of the video and read the book, and I can tell you nothing can be more strategic at this time. Well done, Onyi Ough, and I look forward to how
you see you, Larry.
Yeah, always my pleasure. Always my pleasure.
Wow, it doesn't get better than that, getting your brother to endorse you. I mean, that's the toughest audience. So thanks very much for that intervention. Can I just bring in a couple of questions that are in the chat? So Kenneth, who's one of our students on the MA program, he's from Trinidad and Tobago, and he says he would love to transplant it there. But he's also wondering whether you've tried or considered aligning the teaching with biblical or religious values, or whether you've tried to sidestep it. Question I find quite interesting, because with some of the work I've been doing with on business integrity in Africa and talking to people who are sort of entrepreneurs, but also very much standing up for integrity, actually religion is often something they mention. Doesn't matter what religion it is, but they will often mention that. So I'm interested in your response on that. And then we also have a question from Mtabisi, who is again a student on our MA program, who's from South Africa. He says, great work, Onyi. I'm more curious on what your observations are related to gender and corruption. When I watched Halima's vote, it was glaring how women were championing ethical behavior. Was it coincidental, or does it reflect Nigerian demographics?
Good questions there. I'll start. Can you hear me well? Should I switch off my video? Yeah. Definitely would be happy for you to. I'll be happy to work. So, can you hear me? I can hear some noise.
Can other people turn off their microphones? I think. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think Kenneth is asking if he would love to transfer this in Trinidad and Tobago. Sure, Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, that's fine. That would be excellent. We're happy to partner, with people who want to replicate this in their countries. And South Nigeria is actually open to that, because we literally have our toolkit that people can adopt. Something they're also trying to do, like a franchise kind of model going for the future. Then when it comes to biblical, we haven't necessarily aligned it with religious teaching, just for so many reasons. People have different religion, in Nigeria. What I mean is Muslims, Christians, and one has to be careful, not like we don't want to, I have to, you have to be, I don't know how to put it. When it comes to, with children, we just focus on the stories. When I'm doing teacher trainings, sometimes, because in Nigeria, we're very religious and we don't mind, you can actually say, oh, everyone believes in God. I know if you go to church, you're supposed to do the right thing, or if you go to the mosque. So we can bring those kind of things in that kind of conversation for the teacher training. But with the children, we've not really, aligned that with religious teaching. So I think that's that. Then on Tabitha's question around gender and corruption, it wasn't coincidental. I was trying to give a message here. The fact that we wanted to just that part of Nigeria, women, northern part of Nigeria mostly, there's a perception, or there's also I think a reality that's not just perception, that women are subdued. We have women don't come out. I know areas where women can't handle money. In the north has to be their husbands and that sort of thing. So I think what we're trying to do with Halima's vote, and if Halima's vote is centered on northern Nigeria, well, just to kind of the future generation coming up, don't be too timid to speak up. You can speak up. If you watch Halima's vote, the movie, you saw when the husband said, women are not, supposed to be speaking, talking about politics, that sort of thing, just to kind of begin to erase those social expectations that women shouldn't talk, and encourage young girls that no, you can talk, your voice can also be heard. So gender and so that's what we're trying to get from that, from using Halima's vote. I don't know if I answered any more questions. Yeah, Liz, did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. That's great. Yeah. Actually, one of the things I really like about it is that, with both of the movies, that they're, really rooted in the difficulties of all of this, and not trying to say, look, it's an easy thing to do, but very much saying it's going to be difficult in your context. But at the same time, you've got these kind of these figures who they're sort of heroes, but they're also people who are quite human, who are struggling with it, and then they sort of do the right thing against the odds. I also totally agree with the point about how they're visually beautiful. So that's great. We don't seem to have any more questions, and we are at 12 o'clock. So we should let you go. But thanks, Onyi. I think really fascinating, and I think probably a lot of people will want to follow up. And there's lots of potential here for this to spread around to other countries. So thank you very much. Really inspiring work.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.